I never thought the woman who raised me would change my life even after she was gone. When I was 6 years old, my parents left me without saying a single word. One morning, I woke up, and they were simply gone. No note, no goodbye, nothing. All I had was my little backpack, a few clothes, and the stuffed bear my mom had given me when I was a baby. I remember sitting on the porch, waiting for hours, thinking they'd come back. But they never did. The only person who didn't leave was my grandma. She opened her arms, took me in, and promised that I would never feel unwanted again. She worked long hours, cooked for me, helped me with school, and told me bedtime stories every night. To the world, she was my grandmother. But to me, she was my entire family, my protector, my reason to keep believing in love. 15 years later, I stood in front of her grave with tears in my eyes and a heart that felt completely empty. Losing her felt like losing the only piece of home I ever had. I thought my life couldn't possibly change anymore. But a week after the funeral, I got a call from her lawyer. He asked me to come to his office because there was something in her will that concerned me. I didn't expect much. Maybe she left me a small keepsake or a letter. But when I sat in that wooden chair, surrounded by distant relatives I barely knew, my world shifted once again. The lawyer opened a folder and began reading in a calm, steady voice. To my beloved grandchild, the one who stood by me when everyone else turned away, I leave my home, my savings, and everything I own. The room went completely silent. I could feel everyone's eyes burning into me. Some looked shocked, others angry, and a few even whispered among themselves. My hands trembled as I tried to process what had just happened. Grandma had left me everything. The house we lived in, her business savings, even her jewelry box, the things her own children probably expected to get. But I wasn't thinking about the money or the inheritance. All I could think about was her voice, her smile, and how she used to say, "Love is shown through actions, not words." I finally understood what she meant. She had chosen me, not out of obligation, but because I was the only one who had chosen her too. I thought losing her was the hardest thing I'd ever face, but I was wrong. Because just as I started to accept her passing and the life she left behind, there was a knock at my door, and standing there were the very people who had abandoned me 15 years ago, smiling as if they'd never left at all. After Grandma's will was read, my life completely changed, but not in the way people think. Owning her house and savings already felt unreal, yet life had one more secret waiting for me. A few weeks after the funeral, while cleaning the dusty corners of her old room, I discovered an envelope tucked inside her wooden jewelry box. My name was written on it in her graceful handwriting, and when I opened it, a single sentence made my heart skip. "You'll find something special in the blue chest in the attic. Open it only when you're ready." My hands trembled as I climbed the narrow attic stairs, the wood creaking under my feet like the house was holding its breath. The attic smelled like time itself, dust, books, and the faint perfume she always wore. In the corner sat the old blue chest I'd seen 100 times growing up, but never thought much of. I knelt, brushed away the cobwebs, and opened it. Inside were folders filled with documents, old property deeds, bonds, and at the bottom, a small locked box with a brass key taped to it. My pulse quickened as I turned the key. When I lifted the lid, I froze. Inside were bundles of cash wrapped neatly in old paper bands, gold jewelry I'd never seen her wear, and an envelope with another note in her handwriting. "My dear child, I've saved this all my life for you. I never trusted anyone else with it. Use it wisely, and never let greed poison your heart." My eyes filled with tears. I could almost hear her voice saying those words, soft but firm, like she was standing right beside me. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the money, overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't name: shock, gratitude, fear, and a strange guilt. She had lived so modestly, cooking simple meals, mending clothes, always saying we didn't have much. Yet all along, She had been quietly saving, protecting something for my future. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what to do next. Should I tell someone? Maybe my best friend? Or a lawyer? But the moment I imagined the looks on people's faces, the curiosity, the fake smiles, the greed, I froze. I remembered how quickly people had changed after Grandma's will was read. They'd whispered, stared, and acted differently around me. If they knew about this hidden fortune, they'd never leave me alone. Grandma's words echoed in my mind. Never let greed destroy your peace. By morning, I'd made my decision. No one could know. I placed everything back inside the chest, locked it, and carried it to my room. I lifted the old wooden floorboard beneath my bed and hid the box there, covering it with a rug. It was my secret now, my inheritance, my safety, my promise to her. I opened a new bank account quietly, transferred a small amount just to have something extra for emergencies, and told no one. I still went to my job every morning, still wore the same clothes, and drove my old car that coughed every time I turned the key. To the world, I was the same struggling person I'd always been. But inside, everything had changed. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel small. Yet even as I tried to act normal, I couldn't shake one thought from my mind. Secrets never stay hidden forever. And I had a feeling that when mine finally came out, it would change everything again. In ways I wasn't ready for, life went on as if nothing had changed. At least that's how it looked from the outside. Every morning, I still woke up before sunrise, brewed the same cheap coffee, and drove my old, squeaky car to work. My coworkers still saw me as the quiet one who could barely afford lunch from the cafe down the street. I laughed along when they joked about my budget life, but deep down, I knew I could buy the whole place if I wanted to. I kept my secret buried, hidden like a treasure locked under the floorboards of my room. I didn't touch the money except for a few small things. I paid off my debts, fixed the house roof, and finally replaced the broken heater Grandma always complained about. But I made sure no one noticed. I still wore the same worn-out shoes, the same faded jacket, and told people I was saving up. I even turned down invitations to hang out, pretending I couldn't afford it. It was easier to play poor than to explain what I had. My relatives, of course, didn't make it any easier. They still treated me like the family failure, the one who never made anything of their life. At gatherings, my aunt would smile politely before saying things like, "You should learn from your cousin, he's doing so well in the city," or "If your grandma hadn't spoiled you so much, maybe you'd have a real job by now." I'd force a small smile, pretending her words didn't sting, but every time it hurt. I wanted to scream that I wasn't struggling anymore, that Grandma's trust had changed everything, but I couldn't. I'd made her a promise. And more than that, I wanted to see who these people really were when they thought I had nothing. Over time, I realized something strange. Money wasn't the real power. The secret was, knowing I had something they didn't, something they couldn't even imagine, made me feel calm, almost invisible. I didn't have to prove myself to anyone anymore. But pretending came with a price. There were nights I'd come home exhausted, open the hidden chest, and stare at the stacks of cash and letters from Grandma, wondering if I was doing the right thing. I could have used that money to change my life, to move to another city, to start fresh, but something kept holding me back. Maybe fear, maybe guilt, maybe love for the memory of the woman who taught me that peace was worth more than anything. Still, the act of pretending started to eat at me. My friends began to drift away, assuming I was too busy or too broke to hang out. At work, people pitied me, thinking I was stuck in the same old cycle. Even my neighbors whispered that I was wasting my life living in that big house alone. And through it all, my parents, who had been ghosts for 15 years, remained silent. No calls, no letters. I thought maybe they'd forgotten I even existed. But part of me knew, deep down, that life wasn't done testing me. Secrets don't stay buried forever, and neither do the people who once left you behind. I could feel it. Something was coming, and when it did, everything I had fought to protect would be dragged into the light. I had kept Grandma's secret for months, maybe close to a year, living quietly and pretending to struggle. The money stayed hidden, untouched except for what I needed to fix small things around the house. The weight of it, though, grew heavier every day. It wasn't the kind of weight you could see or touch. It was the silence, the pretending, the constant act of being someone I wasn't. But one day, I decided I needed to know something for sure. I wanted to see who my family really was without the illusion of money clouding their eyes. Maybe it was foolish, but I wanted to test them, to see if any of them still had a heart. I told myself it was just curiosity, but deep down, I knew it was something more. I needed proof. So I started with my aunt, the one who always boasted about her 2 sons and their big jobs in the city. I called her one evening, voice shaky, rehearsing every word in my head before saying it. "Auntie," I began, "I'm behind on my bills. Work's been slow, and I might lose the house if I can't pay the next few months." There was a pause on the line, then a sigh so heavy it almost made me regret calling. "You're still living in that big place," she said. "Maybe if you stopped trying to act like you're better than everyone, you wouldn't be in this mess." Her words cut deep. I tried to explain, to say it wasn't like that, but she didn't care. "I've got my own family to think about," she said coldly before hanging up. I sat there staring at the phone, realizing that kindness was conditional in her world. Next, I called my uncle, the one who always acted nice in public but avoided me whenever I asked for anything small. I told him my rent was overdue and that I might need help with groceries. He chuckled, like it was a joke. "You've always been terrible with money," he said. "Your grandma spoiled you too much. Maybe now you'll finally learn." He said it with a smile, but every word dripped with judgment. "I can't help you," he added. "I'm not running a charity." Then he hung up, laughing as if I were entertainment. Each conversation left me emptier than the last, but I wasn't done. I called my cousin, the one who always claimed we were close. I told him I needed a small loan, just for a few weeks. He sighed dramatically and said, "You know, you really should stop depending on others. Everyone works hard for their money. You can't just expect handouts." I wanted to scream that I didn't need a handout, that this was all a test, but I held it in. I thanked him for his honesty and ended the call. Later that night, I texted my younger brother, the only person I truly thought might care. We hadn't spoken in years, but a part of me still believed that blood meant something. I wrote, "Hey, I'm in a tough spot. Could you help with a few bills? I'll pay you back next month." His reply came within minutes. "You're still broke? Guess nothing's changed. Maybe if you worked harder instead of clinging to Grandma's memory, you wouldn't be such a mess." That one broke me. I stared at the screen until the words blurred from my tears. I didn't respond. I just turned off my phone and sat in silence, the house suddenly feeling too big, too quiet, too empty. For years, I'd believed that one day they'd come around, that maybe they'd see me as family again. But this was the truth laid bare. They didn't care. They never had. To them, I was just the unwanted child Grandma raised out of pity, the burden left behind when they walked away. As I sat there, the hidden fortune upstairs suddenly felt meaningless. What was the point of having everything if the people who were supposed to love you treated you like you were nothing? I could have given them money that would have changed their lives, but they couldn't even give me an ounce of compassion. That night, I opened the blue chest again and looked at the stacks of cash, the letters, the documents. everything Grandma had saved with love and hope for me. But instead of feeling lucky, I felt hollow. The walls echoed with the sound of a family that only existed in memory. I realized then that my millions, my so-called security, meant nothing if my own blood saw me as worthless. And for the first time, I understood what Grandma really meant when she said, "People change when money is involved." She wasn't just warning me about greed. She was warning me about love that disappears when tested. Days passed after those cold rejections, and the silence from my family was louder than ever. Every message I'd sent, every call I'd made, it all echoed back with nothing but indifference. But inside me, something was changing. The sadness I'd carried for so long was slowly turning into anger, a deep, burning anger that came from years of being taken for granted, mocked and dismissed. I thought about all the times I had gone without dinner just so my younger brother could eat, all the birthdays I'd skipped buying myself something, so I could afford small gifts for my parents who had already walked away from me. I thought about when Grandma got sick, and I was the only one there, sleeping on the hospital floor, holding her hand through the nights, begging doctors to keep her alive a little longer. Where were they then? Not one of them had shown up. Not once. They didn't even come to the funeral. They'd only sent a single text. Let us know if there's anything important we need to handle legally. That was it. No condolences, no tears. And now, years later, they acted like I was the burden. The next family gathering happened almost by accident. My cousin was hosting a small dinner for his engagement, and he'd invited everyone except me. But somehow, word got to me through an old neighbor. So I went. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. I wanted to see them, to look them in the eyes and ask the question that had been haunting me for months. Why wasn't I ever enough? When I walked in, their faces froze. My aunt's smile faltered mid-sentence. My uncle shifted uncomfortably, pretending to scroll through his phone. My cousin's fiancée looked confused. "Oh, you made it," she said, trying to be polite. I forced a small smile. I did. I thought it'd be nice to see everyone again. My aunt leaned forward, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "We didn't think you'd want to come, dear. You've been busy, haven't you? Struggling with bills and all." That was it, the moment something inside me snapped. I put my bag down and looked around the table. Struggling? You're right. I was. But do you know what's funny? Not one of you cared enough to check in. Not one of you picked up the phone when I needed help. My uncle scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. "Oh, please, don't make this dramatic. We all have our own problems. You can't expect everyone to drop everything for you." "Drop everything," I repeated, my voice rising. When Grandma was dying, I did drop everything. I worked double shifts to pay for her treatments while you all enjoyed your vacations. I was the one who cleaned her house, handled her medicine, and buried her when she passed. You know what she told me before she died? She said, "One day, the truth will show who really cared." I looked each of them in the eye as the room fell silent. My aunt rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. Don't make us the villains in your little sob story. Grandma spoiled you. You always thought you were special because she gave you everything." That last part made me laugh, a bitter, broken laugh that caught them off guard. "Everything," I said quietly. "She gave me love. That's all. Something none of you ever did." My cousin muttered under his breath. "Maybe that's why she never had money left. She wasted it all on you." My heart pounded, and I could feel my hands shaking. I wanted to walk out. I wanted to scream. But instead, I looked straight at them and said, "You think she wasted it? You think love is a waste?" They didn't answer. My aunt just looked annoyed, my uncle checked his watch, and my brother, who had finally shown up, sat in the corner with that same cold smirk I'd seen in his text messages. It was then that I realized something. These people weren't ashamed. They weren't sorry. They didn't feel guilt or regret. They just wanted control. And for the first time, I saw them clearly. Every fake smile, Every cutting remark, it was all greed dressed as pride. So I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You know," I said, "you keep talking about how broke I am, how I've always been a failure. But tell me, what would you say if I told you I wasn't broke at all?" My cousin laughed. "Right. You won the lottery or something." I smiled faintly, staring at the table. "Something like that," I said softly. My aunt's expression shifted slightly, curiosity flickering for the first time. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "You'll see," I replied, standing up. "I've spent years proving myself to people who never cared. But soon, you'll all see who Grandma truly trusted." Their laughter followed me as I walked out, but I didn't care. I could feel Grandma's voice in the back of my mind, whispering like she used to when she wanted to comfort me. The truth has its own timing. That night, as I sat in my car with tears streaming down my face, I knew I was done hiding. The secret was heavy, but soon it would set me free. After that night, I stopped answering their calls. For days, my phone buzzed endlessly, messages from my aunt pleading for a family meeting, my brother demanding I explain myself, my cousins pretending they just wanted to reconnect. But I didn't owe them anything anymore. I blocked their numbers, changed my email, and packed my bags. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running away. I was walking toward peace. The house that once felt like a prison of memories became just a place filled with dust and silence. I donated most of Grandma's old furniture to charity, kept her letters, and locked the door one last time. As I drove away, I whispered a quiet thank you to her, not for the money, but for the lesson that money alone can't buy family, respect, or love. The first thing I did was take a trip, not somewhere extravagant or luxurious, but somewhere quiet, where no one knew my name. I ended up in a small coastal town, the kind Grandma used to talk about visiting one day. The air was salty and soft, the sound of waves almost healing. 4 weeks, I didn't talk to anyone about the past. I let the silence mend what years of rejection had broken. Every morning, I'd sit by the water with coffee in hand and remind myself I survived everything that was meant to destroy me. When I returned, I decided to use the money differently. I found the nurse who had cared for Grandma during her last months, a kind woman named Clara who used to bring soup from her own kitchen when I couldn't afford decent meals. She never asked for anything, never treated me like I was less. I paid off her medical school debt and set up a small fund in her name to help caregivers who work with the elderly. When she cried and hugged me, I realized that helping someone who truly deserves it fills a kind of emptiness no luxury ever could. Then I started therapy. At first, it felt strange, talking about pain I had buried for years. But week by week, I began to understand that forgiveness isn't about excusing others. It's about freeing yourself from their power. My therapist once said, "You can't heal in the same place that broke you." And she was right. I learned to stop replaying every cruel word, every moment I wished I'd spoken up. I stopped asking why my family didn't love me the way I needed them to. Some questions don't deserve answers. One afternoon, while I was sorting through old photos, my neighbor's teenage daughter stopped by. She reminded me a little of myself, quiet, shy, always worrying about being enough. She'd heard about the lottery win from gossip around town and asked, "Is it true you're rich now?" I smiled and said, "I guess some people would call it that." She frowned. "So, does money make you happy?" I thought for a long moment before answering. "No," I said softly. "Money can make life easier, but happiness comes when you're surrounded by peace, not people who pretend to love you." She nodded, maybe not fully understanding, but I could see the thoughts stay with her. In the months that followed, I started writing again, journaling about Grandma, about the pain, the anger, and the healing. I invested in small charities that helped orphan children and struggling single parents, people who knew what it felt like to be abandoned but still chose kindness. Every act of giving stitched a little more of me back together. The loneliness didn't vanish overnight, but it became gentler, softer, easier to carry. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit on the porch under the stars and talk to Grandma in my head. I'd tell her about the people I helped, the therapy sessions that made me cry, and the new peace I was building. I'd imagine her smiling, proud, her voice echoing through the quiet. "See? I told you the truth would set you free." And she was right. In losing my family, I found myself. The mansion of memories built on pain was gone, and in its place stood something stronger: self-respect, healing, and peace. The money may have changed my circumstances, but what truly saved me was understanding this. Real wealth isn't what's in your bank account. It's waking up without bitterness, loving without fear, and knowing that even alone, you are finally free. They say money changes people, but standing here now, after everything, I know that's not true. Money doesn't change people, it reveals who they really are. Before all this, I used to believe that family meant unconditional love, that no matter what happened, blood would always protect you. But when I had nothing, they turned their backs, and when I had everything, they came running. That's not love, that's greed wearing the mask of family. It's funny, isn't it? The same people who once mocked me for being a burden suddenly couldn't stop pretending to care once they thought there was something to gain. And it made me realize something powerful. The only people who truly love you are the ones who stand beside you when you have nothing to offer them. Looking back now, I don't regret keeping the secret. I don't regret walking away either. What I regret is how long I blamed myself for their choices, how long I thought I wasn't enough. But I finally understand. Being alone isn't a punishment when your peace is the reward. The truth is, no amount of money can fix a broken bond, and no fortune can buy genuine love. What it can do, though, is give you clarity. It can strip away the lies, the manipulation, and show you who was truly there for you, not for what you could give. So, if you're listening to my story right now, I want you to think about this. If you won millions tomorrow, would you tell your family? Would they celebrate with you, or start calculating what they could take from you? Be honest with yourself. Sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones who see our worth only when it benefits them. That's why protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. Because the moment money enters the picture, true intentions come out. I've learned that wealth isn't counted in dollars. It's counted in freedom, trust, and peace of mind. I may have millions in the bank, but my real treasure is waking up each morning knowing that I'm no longer living to please people who never cared. I'm finally living for me, and for the ones who showed kindness when I had nothing to give back. If my story taught you something about greed, family, or the meaning of real wealth, then don't just scroll past. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you suddenly became rich? Would you share it, or would you keep it hidden like I did? I want to hear your thoughts. And if you've ever had someone show you their true colors when life changed, share your story below. Someone out there needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story like this again. Because sometimes the lessons we learn the hard way are the ones that set us free.